Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Dailies to Downloads. This is our show. My name is Chad, former glorified blogger at 411 Mania and current movie fan. And with me, as usual, is Erik, who has also written for 411, but has also written for a lot of legit publications like Film Comment and what else there?
Yeah, Filmmaker Magazine, IndieWire, a couple places. I like that we should change it up every time. That's something different. Like, well, a man of letters.
So today we're going to be doing we didn't think we were going to do a part two about the pandemic's effect on the movie industry and movie watching, but that's what we're going to do because right after we recorded last week's episode, AMC came forward with an announcement that they were going to be reopening, and AMC's been in the headlines, but other theaters have followed suit. Regal is also going to be opening, and Cinemark as well. So we're going to talk about that, and which is going to lead into a discussion a little bit about Tenet. And so we'll get started by the current news is the fact that AMC is going to be coming back in around 100 theaters, at least by August 20th. I think that's the earliest date that I saw. Not every state, but they are going to be coming back. And like AMC and Regal, they all have a lot of new rules and procedures and restrictions related to COVID and how they're going to be implementing these new procedures with people going back. And we'll touch on some of those. But the reason that AMC is making headlines, predominantly anyway, is the fact that they are going to have one day where they allow 15-cent tickets. And so that has kind of got everybody talking. Specifically, even though that sounds very enticing, is that a good idea? Because, from a business perspective, you understand it. They want to get people back in the theaters. They want to start to make money again. They want to entice people to be comfortable going back to the theater. But is that a good thing? I would say no. But Erik, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is just a way to bring people back. Of course, you would assume if it's that cheap, I'm not sure how the ticketing is going to work. You would assume those would be gone very quickly, I guess. But also, I imagine they're not going to be having as many seats available. I would be interested to almost go to one just to see what this new arrangement and these new precautions are put into place. Like, are they just taping seats so that you can't sit in certain ones? Of course, with everything being reserved seating now, I guess it's a little easier to black out certain seats or 6 feet apart, etc. And yeah, it just seems a little bit strange because typically, as we all know, a lot of the theater revenue comes from concessions and things like that. But then that's going to require you to take a mask off, and there are all these. I keep seeing all these roadblocks that they would be running into in order for things to quote unquote get back to normal. So I do
like
that,
they have said all these new rules, they're going to have people make sure people are sitting 6 feet apart. They're going to allow extra time between screenings for cleaning. Regal, I looked on their website, they said that masks must be worn at all times in the auditorium except for when you're eating or drinking, which is
yeah.
So there's a lot of rules that look good on paper, but actually enforcing those rules is quite another thing. Let alone the fact of, are we comfortable with this? Personally, as much as I said in the last episode, I really miss the movie experience. I miss going to the theaters. I don't think that this is a good idea because on top of this, you have the movie theaters trying to say, please come back to our buildings and buy our concessions and enjoy the movies. And you also, outside of movies, have the controversy of kids going back to school. So you have kids who might be going back to school. A lot of them, it seems, are going to be learning virtually, but that's different in every state. And then you have the movie theaters saying, please come back to our buildings. And we're still very much in the middle of this pandemic. It's not over yet. There's cases sparking all over the country as it happens every day. So I think that this is, while I understand that they want to make money, I think that this is a very dangerous thing that's happening right now. I mean, 15-cent tickets sounds interesting, but in the case of AMC, I know they're going to be showing a lot of older movies. In a perfect world, it would be cool to see some of those movies on the big screen. I don't really care to do that right now.
Yeah.
If I really want to watch Back to the Future, I'll just pop it on my TV and leave it at that. You will have movies like The New Mutants and Russell Crowe's Unhinged. Please
Oh
go
yeah.
seek out that trailer of him promoting it if you haven't seen it. But yeah, so I don't know. I think these rules are interesting on paper, but I really don't see them being able to enforce it very well, especially
Yeah.
considering a lot of the people that work at theaters are young kids. So
Yeah, and at least as long as I don't mind if people are going to go, I probably would not. But at least that means that things like Tenet and other films that are going to be opening will be available digitally a lot faster now. Like I can wait till Christmas, when it will probably be available to watch via digital stream. So I won't participate in the getting back to normal portion right now. But if they need to reopen up, okay, like that's I guess their prerogative. Of course, this is it the studios that are driving the theaters opening, or are the theaters driving the studio? You know what I mean? Like what needs which more in
well, yeah,
order to
I mean, movie theaters were certainly ticket sales were down before the pandemic. Um,
yeah.
you know, and I mean, this only made it worse. So I would say this is, probably a little bit of both, but I think it's definitely fronted by the theater owners who really want to continue making money. And because, I mean, how many headlines did we see where AMC is, or Regal or both are in danger of going out of business?
Yeah.
And, you know, on top of that, one of the news items that hasn't made a lot of headlines is the fact that the owner, president of AMC, I know his name is Aaron. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but when asked like how the expenses of all these new things that they're implementing to combat COVID and prevent the spread of it, he said that that would be passed on to the consumer. So whereas initially we might see 15-cent tickets for a day, which is all great, expect other prices of things like concessions to go up because obviously they're that's it's going to have to happen at some point. So it was really
Yeah.
not a lot to look forward to in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I get that. We'll see what some of the smaller independently run theaters do. I know they have, like we talked about last time, the virtual cinema option in a lot of scenarios, but hopefully they can stay afloat. That aren't going to be playing those kind of gigantic summer movies. We'll see what else comes out down the pipeline. I know they're still kind of rescheduling and reshuffling a bunch of stuff, but it does start to be new trailers are coming out for things, so it does feel like we're not on pause as much anymore. Well, who knows if that's for the better or not, but yeah.
Right, and we were mentioned Tenet. I know people that I'm friends with on Facebook, former colleagues of ours at 411 have, talked about how they're only going to go see that movie in the theater. And I think even the composer of Tenet has said that, this is a movie that needs to be seen in the theater. And, it brings up like a related conversation in that, obviously, some movies are great when you see them on the big screen. It can certainly enhance the experience. I mean, just taking Christopher Nolan's Inception, that was a movie that was really great on the big screen. His movies are often, very great big screen experiences. But I also think it's dangerous when you have somebody that worked on the movie telling people, kind of urging them to go to the theater, even if he doesn't really know the message he's sending. He's trying to get people to go to the theater. And I understand that some people want to wait and see this on the big screen, but I don't have to do that. Like I'm perfectly content waiting, as you mentioned earlier, waiting to see this, digitally. And it'll be fine because to me, at the end of the day, the movie needs to hold up no matter how you're watching it. Another director who has great big screen experience is Martin Scorsese. But I watched The Irishman on our TV at home because it was a Netflix release, and I was fine with that. It was still a great movie. There seems to be kind of like this some in some circles where they kind of look down upon watching a movie on your phone or watching a movie on a small screen, or well, it's not the same if you watch it on your TV. And even Tom Hanks was expressing some irritation about the fact that Greyhound didn't open on big screens. And I get it, it's a war movie. War movies are always great on the big screen, but to me the movie needs to hold up no matter how you see it. you know Seeing it in certain ways can certainly enhance, but at the end of the day, the movie's quality should be judged on its own. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it'll be really interesting as because I think Tenet's gonna open on like the last day of August or right around there. It'll be interesting to see like the actors as they're doing like their press because like they have to encourage people to go see it, but at the same time they gotta feel a little guilty. I mean, it'd be a little they're in a tough position because yes, I think everybody should probably go see something on the big screen. Some of those studios put their money where their mouth is and push the new Fast and the Furious back an entire year, because we don't want to put anyone in harm's way and we want you to see on the big screen. I guess maybe Time Warner can't financially float that way. That who knows what their own situation is. But it is interesting, yeah, like you said, the mixed messages of yes, you should see on the big screen. It's got to come out now for whatever reason. We got to sell this movie. I think the big thing that they're probably nervous about too is that even though I won't see Tenet in the theater, I do totally expect to have most of it spoiled for me before I see it. As a result, like what I mean, and I think that's one of the things that they're fearful of. But it's just going to happen. It's just you can't. It's. I know he's big on the secrets and twists of his movies in a way, and apparently there's it may be like 190 minutes, which also I wouldn't want to sit in for
That
that
doesn't
long.
surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. And with Greyhound, for me, I think that we're still, and maybe you feel differently about this, but I feel like we're still not at the point where if a film is being released solely digitally, it has the same cachet, I guess. Like, I feel like Greyhound, after they decided to pivot and only put it out on Apple TV Plus, that you didn't hear too, like, I heard a little bit about it for like 3 or 4 days, I guess, leading up to the release, but after that, I didn't hear anything. I don't know. I know maybe 3 or 4 people that have an Apple TV subscription, but even beyond that, I just feel like a lot of the general publicity that probably would come with a typical theatrical release, this didn't get. And I feel like then it kind of just it comes and it goes. And it just becomes another thing in the queue and then we kind of move on. So
Right.
I do think that is something to be wary of. Same thing like Spike Lee's film Defy Bloods came out in June. Like it had some conversation around it very briefly.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like if it was like a limited release, put in more theaters week by week, it would have built more of that word of mouth. That just kind of now with such a wide release available for everybody at the exact same time, that I feel like it has shorter shelf life.
Well, yeah, and no, I agree with you on both movies, and I think the reason is like that's the part of the movie going experience that we might not think about every time, which is okay. Avatar 2 is in theaters now, and if I want to see it on the big screen, I've got to see it, in a certain amount of time, and
Mhm.
so everybody goes to see it, presumably in the first few weeks, and
Mhm.
then that word of mouth spreads, and there's that demand because going to the movies is still an event. Obviously some theaters are better and more cleaner and more prestigious than others, but it's still an event. And when you have a movie like Greyhound or Defy Bloods or any movie on Netflix really, or Apple TV Plus, you don't have that urgency to see it right away. Now Greyhound got positive reviews, as did Defy Bloods, but in the back of a lot of people's head, I think, and because I still haven't seen Greyhound, and I need to because I need to wait for my wife. She wants to watch it together. However, which is a separate conversation. But
Sure.
you know, there isn't that urgency to see it right away because it's like, well, I have it on this streaming platform, so I'll watch it when I get around to it. You
Yeah.
know, whereas if it's in the theater and it's really a theatrical, if it's a movie you really want to see in the theater, you have more of a, okay, I need to get tickets, you know,
Yeah.
and I need to go out, you know, with my girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever, and see it, you know, on the big screen. And like I said, it's hard to replace that experience, but you know, movies have to be judged how they have to be judged. But you're right in that it doesn't have kind of the same buzz, you know, surrounding those movies.
Yeah.
You know, which is unfortunate. You know, it kind of has to be like a sort of, you know, slow boil, I guess. You
Yeah,
know,
it does. I was just thinking back to like last year, like around this time period where everyone was still talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that was something that opened wide, but then still kind of built, and then more word of mouth, and then like I don't want to say controversial hot takes, but different opinions about certain elements of the movie, and that came later. And there was like some more of like a discovery, sustained conversation. I felt like that went throughout the summer. I feel like if a film like that were just premiere on Netflix, you'd get that for about 72 hours, and that would be it, like you said. Or I'll get to it when I get to it. I pay my monthly subscription fee, so I'm not in any rush,
right.
and it's competing with so many other things on a lot of those same streaming platforms, right? Like
So
everything.
many other things. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, the Netflix top 10 changes all the time. I mean, they just released, you know, a movie, you know, that if it was released in theaters, it would at least have people talking for a little bit. Project Power, you
Mhm.
know, with Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you know, and you know, so I happened to watch it this past weekend, but you know, I don't. How long are people going to be talking about that? Because Netflix is probably going to have a whole slew of releases, you know, this Friday and the Friday after that, and you
Yeah.
know, it kind of, you know, there's so much content out there right now that like it does take away from, you know, the immediacy of watching something and making it as much of an event as possible, so that when you have a movie like The Irishman or The Five Bloods or you know, what was you know, some, so there's a bunch of movies like, you just, you know, it kind of gets looped in with everything else,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though they might be made by really famous directors or star A-list celebrities. You know, it's like, well, I feel like watching this true crime doc right now. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I just like you mentioned, like when I'll see something trending online, like it'll be like the Ocean's movies, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 13, or The Firm. It's like a very random thing, which is cool. But I'm like, why are people talking about this now all of a sudden? And you'll see like, oh, it just debuted on Netflix this past week, and so it's in like the top 10, competing against their original films, and yada yada yada. So I guess there are some people who will, would go to the movie theater movies every Friday and just see something. So maybe Netflix is hoping that they will just develop that same thing at home. Every Friday, you jump on Netflix. Thursday at 3 a.m. if you're have insomnia, the new stuff will premiere, and you'll just kind of catch up. Yeah, I mean
right.
that's replacing of that, I guess.
So one of the things I didn't mention when we were talking about Tenet is the rules that kind of came down the pike from the studio in in the regards to how the movie is shown at the theater.
Mhm.
One of the things that has come out is the fact that the studio wants 63% of the box office, and you know, we don't have to get too far into the weeds about how this is, you know, divided up, but you know, usually the studios ask for about around 60%, you know, of the box office, at least initially. And then I guess, you know, what happens a lot of times is the first week, you know, the studio might ask for a bigger percentage, and as the weeks go on, you know, the theater might get a little bit bigger of a
Mhm.
chunk. You know,
Mhm.
so it kind of changes like that. And we had joked, you know, off camera about, you know, the ad with Tenet, which is, you know, what did it say? You know, where theaters are
Like,
open.
yeah, August 31st, where theaters are open. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, outside of it being redundant, it's also just a great visual representation of our current uh, situation globally. I guess.
Right, which is the fact that like they, it's like, well, if you can find a theater, go.
It's
Other,
showing it.
like,
If they're open,
do
yeah.
it if you can, but we really don't know what theaters are going to be open and or when. And even if you go to the AMC website, you can see schedules of different theaters in different states. And in New York and New Jersey, where we are, it says will open when state and local guidelines allow, which I gotta be honest is how it should be right now,
Yeah.
because at least our governors aren't ready to give people that message yet, and they really shouldn't be. In PA though, where a lot of my family lives, they're opening I think on the August 20th and the 27th and September 3rd are like the scattered dates that some of these theaters are opening.
Mhm.
But one of the things I guess that came out of the Tenet news is the fact that right now the studio has the negotiating power. Um, you know, and the studio wants to make money too. They're not making as much money as they would have normally anyway. So they want to make it clear, like, hey, we need to get our piece, our bigger piece before you get yours, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think hopefully you're gonna they'll both sides will benefit, and they can't. It's not business like usual. Even though they're doing this, Tenet is not going to have the same reach that even Dunkirk or any of his previous movies had. Like, it's just going to be graded on a curve. Uh, it'll be interesting just to see how like the online chatter around it goes as more people see it. I guess depending on when it opens when theaters open. That's I am interested. Like something else we had mentioned before recording is that there are a lot of articles out there now about now a proliferation of drive-ins. If there are, because drive-ins are pretty safe for during a pandemic, as long as
Yeah, it should make a comeback.
stay in your car and blah blah blah. So, I mean, that maybe would be a way I would see. Not that there's a drive-in very close, but I mean, I could do I don't know, make a trip out of it or some kind of a fun event with a couple of people.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I would consider going to a drive-in, like, unfortunately, over the past few decades, a lot of the drive-ins were taken down to make room for, malls and plazas and, big department stores and stuff like that. So they are very few and far between. And who would have thought that
yeah,
drive-ins have an opportunity to make a comeback in 2020, but they really do. Now I don't know if I would see a movie like Tenet in a drive-in theater. I would have to see how the technology of screens has progressed, because back in the late 80s and early 90s, at least when my memory was first were able to register, like they were on these really big dingy looking screens, and I mean
yeah,
it wasn't
like
HD.
sheet metal.
Yeah, it wasn't 1080p picture quality.
Mhm.
So you know I would consider going to a drive-in theater if it was like a family movie.
Mhm.
It'd make it an event. But to sit for 3 hours and watch Tenet not knowing the effects, and obviously this the CGI and stuff is probably very important in his movies, as it usually is. But yeah, drive-in movie theaters, they have an opportunity right now. Who knows? We'll see, and what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like, and of course, it's all due to this current pandemic. Like, I would not advise anyone to invest in a drive-in going forward, because as soon as when
I got a second mortgage out. I was
yeah, that vaccine comes, when okay, we're gonna go right back to well, maybe how it used to be. But yeah, I mean, that was I know some drive-ins in Pennsylvania that will like make it themed, because they couldn't do the financial jump to switch to like DCP and stuff, so they still have like 35 millimeter projector, so they show older films, and it really turned that into like a retro kind of thing. And yeah, it cost so many thousands of dollars to upgrade. So there
right.
are some that have and now find themselves in a pretty good position, but it's obviously temporary. But it's an
Yeah,
option.
and you wonder if some of these big theater chains are considering that as an option. I know back in the, I want to say, first quarter of COVID hitting, the president of AMC basically described this as just an interruption,
Yeah,
the virus, and that it would all be over soon. You know, I'm hoping that his stance on that has changed a little. I mean, but you know if it were me, I'd certainly throw that out as a suggestion, like, hey, this property is available. Maybe we should try this.
Yeah, yeah. As with many things, live events, sporting events, concerts, theater, all that kind of stuff. It's gonna definitely be that weird, uncomfortable time where we have to like transition back. If we hopefully that we do. Hopefully we don't. This is not the new reality. Forever. Like so, this whole awkward fuzziness stage of reopening some theaters, maybe too soon. Maybe they're gonna have to shut down again. Maybe they're gonna,
Right.
as long as I don't have to participate in that as a part of the case study, it's okay to kind of, I guess, for me to just like observe that from
And will
afar.
they shut down? Like what are,
Yeah.
like, because there are a lot of questions that haven't really been answered or gone in depth enough, by these theater chains. And like, will they shut down under certain circumstances? And what are those circumstances? Like, what's the
Mhm.
barometer? When will they say, okay, we need to pull the plug again? It'll like, these are all things that they really need to make clear. Because at least I could speak for New Jersey. Like, our governor had said
Mhm.
in terms of schools, like, if two or more kids in a school have the virus, we
Right.
can pull the plug and have those kids go back home. So
Yeah.
like, it needs to be laid out, I think, a little bit more specifically. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
On a separate note, we had joked also about, people wearing masks in movies going forward, and
Yeah.
if that should be a thing. And I have to say, some of the movies that I watch and shows, like, I do notice, like, oh man, look at how close those people are together.
Absolutely.
Which is a weird thing to notice. But like, what do you think? Do you think Hollywood should mirror reality more in terms of people wearing masks, or do you think it's like, well,
Yeah, I would say, just speaking personally, I would say no, and I'm also seeing like you're seeing a lot of things now because we've been in this pandemic now for like 5 months, a little bit more than that. We're now starting to see certain like, oh, celebrities made this brand new series that's shot in quarantine, and I can't think of something I'd want to watch less because like we're still in it, and even when we get out of it, I don't want to have to relive this moment. You know what I mean? Like
right.
uh, so I think
Right,
that
no,
would be
exactly. And I
yeah.
don't know, Eric. Thor should have a mask on next time we see him.
Yeah, hopefully in a couple of years this will be just a distant memory and we'll kind of remember it, but I don't want to because also any film that would take that on is automatically set during the pandemic.
Right.
I, I would imagine, right? We can't do a Civil War film and they're on the mess. Oh well, what's going on here? Like it would have to be set within
They
2020,
were very
and
health conscious back, when the North and South were battling. It's
yeah, yeah, I guess, yeah, I guess so.
no,
So yeah,
I've heard that adult films, you'll see some masks in adult films. And if you look
yeah,
back into the Blu-ray versus HD DVD war, the underground theory is that, once porn made a choice, that's where everybody else went. So I don't know if they start having their stars wear
well,
masks, everybody might be like, well, hey,
I mean, if that's our barometer, yeah, I mean, it would definitely be yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think people are already uh, a lot of our TV, like those reality shows or like the American Idol type shows. I've had to get used to like watching shows that are mostly Zoom based, Zoom shot. It's like everyone is in separate apartments and it's edited together very well. It's a very professionally done thing, but you're still watching a bunch of talking heads on Zoom. You know, but again, it's fine given the moment, but I would not want that to be the reality going forward. It's very different. Like as we're talking right now during like the conventions going on for the presidency, like it's all digitally. Hopefully this is just like a historical moment. It is that's not going to be long term carried
yeah,
with
no,
us.
obviously, yeah, that's what we all want. Well, I think that'll about wrap up our show for this week. But we recommended a couple films last week, so we'll try to make that a regular thing if we can. This week, I will recommend Driveways. which was Brian Dennehy's last film, released earlier this year. I think you can still find it if you look around. That was another one of those movies where I had to get a digital ticket through a movie theater. But it's definitely out there. Really great performance by him. Really, sweet, quiet little drama. I miss seeing, quiet dramas,
Yeah.
and, great direction all around. But anything you want to recommend, Eric?
I would just recommend one that's coming out on September the 4th. I'll just put it out there now. I just recently saw a documentary called Feels Good Man, which is about that. You've definitely seen it, but you may not know that Pepe the Frog, the green meme, and how it had been co-opted by I guess what we say the alt-right, and the original creator of that meme didn't. That character, he's an animator. He had nothing to do with what it would become, and it's kind of like the legal battles that he goes through to not have one of his most famous works associated with like this very bad thing. So how the art can kind of be hijacked and co-opted for purposes that you never anticipated and you never wanted. So it's learn. There's a memeologist. There are all these interesting internet culture studies that they talk about. So that will be online, which is where it should. I mean, that is an online movie about being online, so that's right for that. Yeah, it comes on the 4th.
All right. Well, definitely go seek out both of those, and please, I will post a link to the Unhinged promo with Russell Crowe. It's amazing. I really think that he should do promotions for a lot of movies going forward. I'm copying somebody else's tweet when I say that, but it's
Yeah.
true. So,
I mean, if ever there's a movie to get you back to theaters, it's one about not trusting strangers that you get too close to because they may harm you. It's really of the moment.
well, anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and keep tuning in as we keep growing and fine tuning our little show here. I hope everybody is staying safe, staying healthy, and have a great week.